Hi, thank you so much for meeting with me. Did you already get a chance to look at the draft that I sent to you? Well, it was good, but just a little too personal. Too personal? Yeah, try to make it academic, not personal. So, what do you think of the new draft? Better, but still too personal. Get rid of most of these extracurricular things, talk more about your academics. This is not about you as a person, this is about you as an academic person. This is the one. That's the perfect draft. That's the personal statement that can get you into Oxbridge. Oh, thank you. It's not really me. Yeah, I know, it's not supposed to be personal, but I don't know. I really wanted to talk about my extracurriculars and stuff. You know what? I'm gonna use my first draft. Goodbye Polish draft and hello first draft. It maybe doesn't say everything they want to hear, but it says everything I wanted to say about me and it I think matters about me. And if Oxbridge doesn't want me for that, well, then I don't think I want to go to Oxbridge. Hello everyone, it's Elena and welcome back to my channel. Now, as you can probably tell from the skip before, the way I structured my personal statement wasn't exactly how my university guidance counselor wanted me to do it. But I think it ended up quite fine because I ended up going to Cambridge, so everything worked itself out even though I used my first draft, which my university guidance counselor did not approve of. But here we are. So if you guys want to know how I structured my personal statement, and this is the approach which I would still use today if I were to write another personal statement, then keep watching. But just remember, personal statements are something unique and they're supposed to be personal. So if you'd use a different structure, then that's absolutely fine as well. First of all, let's talk about the structure that I would recommend using for writing your personal statement. Now, I broke down the structure of my old personal statement, and if you guys are interested in the full personal statement, I'm going to link it in the info box below for you guys, but here I'm just going to go over the structure that I used. So first we have our introduction. Don't waste too many words on this, and I would recommend using a quite specific event in your life that made you want to then study the course that you're applying for. Why would I recommend using something quite specific? Because it helps you avoid things like, saying, oh, I've always wanted to study at Cambridge. No, you really didn't, because when you were a baby, you probably didn't even know what Cambridge was. So avoid these things. A lot of people use these phrases and admissions officers are probably really tired of them by now. So instead, use something specific that's also more memorable. Now, when I say use something specific, what I mean is maybe you have a certain life event. For example, for law, you may have had an experience of the court system, stuff like that. Or maybe it is just, a book that you read that made you want to study law, or maybe something you learned about in school. It can really be anything, but make it specific because that shows that, it's something personal to you and that's your personal motivation, not something that you just Googled around why do people want to study law and that's what came out. Next we have a quite big paragraph, and that's a paragraph about your academic achievements. Now this is not a paragraph about all of the academic achievements of your life, but rather it's a way of showing off that you have demonstrated an academic interest in the course before you applied for it. So think about, how do the subjects that I studied in high school relate to the course that I'm applying for? Are there any skills that you gained in these classes that are transferable to the degree that you want to do? So this is really just a way of showing them, look, I have had an interest in this before and I'm bringing the skills that it takes to study this course to the table. And that's pretty much all that you're doing in this paragraph. Now the next big paragraph does pretty much exactly the same thing, but instead of it talking about your academic achievements, it talks about your extracurriculars. So whether you were part of certain student societies, organized certain events, or you have some work experience, whatever it is that you have that relates to the course that you're going to study, put that into that paragraph. And then lastly, this tiny paragraph at the end is your sort of conclusion of your personal statement. So in there, I would recommend first tying everything back to the beginning of your essay. So because you've now talked about, how you have the skills for studying law, etc., what you bring to the table. So now tie it back to how is studying law actually going to help you achieve that goal or address that issue that you mentioned in the beginning of your introduction. And once you've done that, I would recommend also talking about why you want to study in the UK and not your home country if you're an international student, because obviously that is a question for the admissions officers, like why do you want to go abroad for your studies? So I would recommend addressing that as well. Okay, so now that we have a structure that we can fill with content for our personal statement, I'm now going to give you guys some more general tips that I have for writing that personal statement. First, let's talk about doing extra readings so that you can mention them in your personal statement. I would not recommend doing that, and there are two reasons for it. First, if you're just doing it to mention it in your personal statement, A, you're probably not going to enjoy it, and the other thing is, you're probably not going to understand it either. And that's the bigger problem, because you probably lack the foundation to understand everything that's going on. And that's why you want to go to university, right? You want to start understanding it. So you're probably not at the level yet to actually engage in the academic debate on your course. And that's fine. But the thing is, if you then name drop the book or the author of it in your personal statement, it's absolutely fair game for them to then ask you about it. And if you then show that you haven't really understood it, it means you really just name drop them without actually understanding the content. And now let's talk about these two big paragraphs, so your academic achievements and then your extracurriculars and how they relate to the course. So there I have a few tips, and the first one is less is often more. So really look at the list of things that you want to talk about and think about whether that can be narrowed down even more, because the less of individual elements that you're talking about, the more you can then actually go into detail about how they relate to the course. And that's really what they want to see. They don't just want to see a list of things that you did. Now don't worry, they're still going to know about the other things that you achieved, whether it's an academic thing or an extracurricular, because remember, your application is not just your personal statement. There's also all the stuff that you put in on UCAS, and there's also your teacher references. But most importantly for both of these paragraphs is to not be too general, because everybody is writing these types of things. So make sure that you are not just sticking to the general stuff. Like, for example, everybody who studied history is going to be like, yeah, I gained essay writing skills from this. Great, everybody gained these. Now these are still important and they should be mentioned, but then also go into detail about your own experience. So for example, I talked about how I wrote an essay about the Nuremberg trials and their significance for international law. So make sure that you show that, yeah, I understand there's some, general things that are always relevant, but I also did these very particular things in the subject, and that makes this entire paragraph a little more interesting to read for the admissions officer, who probably reads the same general things like 1,000 times in that day. So, give them something that they can enjoy reading. And lastly, and this ties back to my argument with whether or not you should do extra reading, is to make sure that everything you mention in your personal statement is something that you would be comfortable being asked about in the interview. So can you confidently talk about this topic? Do you actually understand it? Don't name drop anything that you don't understand, because they may pick up on it in the interview. I like to say everything in your personal statement is fair game for the interview, and I think that's a good approach to take, because what else are they supposed to, base their interview questions on? They have your personal statement, so obviously they are going to want to know a little bit more about some of the things that you talked about, so make sure you can actually talk about them. And yeah, that's it. That's how I would approach writing a personal statement for Oxbridge. Now, this is definitely not the approach that my university guidance counselor wanted me to take, and I want to stress that this is not the only approach. Because however you want to write your personal statement, that's what I would recommend going with. Because at the end of the day, it is a personal statement. So make sure that it's unique, that it's really you. And if it's a totally different structure, then that's fine too, because this is about you. So make it however you want it to be. And yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you are applying to universities this year, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye!